What makes a horror villain truly great? Is it the body count, the supernatural abilities, the intelligence? Maybe it's the ability to make an entire theater audience afraid to turn off the lights. Or maybe the greatest horror villain is the one who doesn't simply kill you, but gets inside your head, changes you, and somehow manages to haunt audiences decades after the credits roll. Because here's the problem. We've ranked horror villains before. We've debated who is the strongest, who is the scariest, who would win in a fight. But those rankings always leave something out. What actually makes a villain great? So I decided to build a test. 8 categories, 10 legendary horror villains, 1 scoreboard, and absolutely no favoritism. This is the Villainometer. The Villainometer. Power, intelligence, manipulation, fear, ideology, damage, hero impact, legacy. Every category receives a score from 1 to 10. 10 means the villain is operating at an elite level. 1 means, well, they probably shouldn't have shown up to this competition. And there's one important rule. Being powerful doesn't automatically make you a great villain. A villain can have supernatural abilities and still be boring. Another villain can have absolutely no powers and completely destroy you psychologically. So let's put horror's most notorious villains through the ultimate test. And when the numbers are added up, we'll find out who truly dominates. Number 10. Leatherface. We begin with one of horror's most primal nightmares. No ancient prophecy, no demonic dimension, no supernatural curse. Just a chainsaw, a mask, and one extremely bad day. Leatherface. And that's precisely what makes him disturbing. There's something brutally primitive about Leatherface. He isn't trying to conquer the world. He doesn't want to become a god. He's not giving a 10-minute speech explaining his philosophy. He is simply a terrifying product of his environment. And sometimes, that's enough. The Villainometer. Power, 6 out of 10. Leatherface is physically imposing and extraordinarily dangerous at close range. But compared with supernatural horror icons, he's still human. A chainsaw can be terrifying, but it doesn't make you invincible. Intelligence, 4 out of 10. Leatherface isn't exactly Hannibal Lecter. His greatest weapons are instinct, brutality, and intimidation. Manipulation, 3/10. He isn't orchestrating elaborate psychological games. He's not controlling people from the shadows. Fear, 9 out of 10. But when that chainsaw starts, everything changes. Leatherface represents pure physical terror. There is nothing elegant about it, nothing sophisticated, just panic. Ideology, 3 out of 10. There's very little philosophical motivation behind the character. Damage, 8 out of 10. His violence is brutal, personal, and unforgettable. Hero impact, 7 out of 10. Survivors don't simply walk away from an encounter with Leatherface unchanged. Legacy, 10 out of 10. The mask, the chainsaw, the silhouette. Leatherface became one of the defining images of horror. Leatherface doesn't need supernatural powers to terrify you. He represents something far more primal. The fear of being trapped with something bigger, stronger, and completely unhinged. The chainsaw isn't his greatest weapon. It's the panic it creates when you hear it coming. Number 9. Ghostface. Now we have a villain who turns horror itself into a game. Ghostface. And there's a fascinating problem with Ghostface. Ghostface isn't one person. It's an identity, a costume, a weapon. And depending on the movie, almost anyone could be underneath that mask. That uncertainty gives Ghostface something most slashers don't have: paranoia. Power, 5 out of 10. Ghostface is human. That keeps the character vulnerable, but it also makes every attack feel possible. Intelligence, 8 out of 10. The killers frequently construct elaborate schemes designed around deception and misdirection. Manipulation, 9 out of 10. Phone calls, threats, secrets, personal information. Ghostface knows how to make victims psychologically unravel before the physical attack even begins. Fear, 8 out of 10. The scariest part? You don't know who to trust. Ideology, 5 out of 10. The motivation changes depending on who's wearing the mask. That's both a strength and a weakness. Damage, 8 out of 10. Ghostface repeatedly turns personal relationships into weapons. Hero impact, 9 out of 10. Survivors don't simply escape. They become trapped inside a cycle of suspicion and trauma. Legacy, 10 out of 10. Ghostface is one of horror's most recognizable identities. Ghostface's greatest weapon isn't the knife, it's uncertainty. Who is behind the mask? Who can you trust? And how do you fight an enemy when literally anyone could be wearing the face? That's what makes Ghostface different. The villain isn't just a person. The villain is paranoia itself. Number 8. Norman Bates. Before supernatural slashers dominated horror, there was a different kind of monster. A monster who didn't need claws, didn't need magical powers, didn't need to chase you through a nightmare. Because Norman Bates represents something much more uncomfortable. The monster can look completely normal. Power, 3/10. He's human. Intelligence, 9/10. Norman is capable of maintaining an elaborate facade while hiding disturbing behavior. Manipulation, 9 out of 10. His ability to appear harmless makes him particularly dangerous. Fear, 10 out of 10. And this is where Norman excels. Because the horror isn't simply what he does, it's the realization that the person standing in front of you may not be the person you think he is. Ideology, 6 out of 10. Norman isn't driven by a grand philosophy. His motivations are deeply psychological. Damage, 8 out of 10. His actions produce enormous physical and psychological consequences. Hero impact, 10 out of 10. Anyone who survives an encounter with Norman is permanently changed. Legacy, 10 out of 10. Norman Bates fundamentally changed the perception of what a horror villain could be. Norman Bates proves that a horror villain doesn't need superhuman strength to become unforgettable. He doesn't look like a monster. He looks like someone you might actually trust. And that's what makes him terrifying. Because sometimes the scariest monster is the one hiding behind a perfectly ordinary face. Number 7. Michael Myers. Now we meet inevitability. Michael Myers. He doesn't need elaborate dialogue. He doesn't need a complicated plan. He doesn't need to explain himself. He just keeps coming. And that's terrifying. Power, 10 out of 10. Whether interpreted as supernatural or something approaching it, Michael's durability and persistence make him extraordinarily difficult to stop. Intelligence, 5 out of 10. Michael isn't a mastermind. He doesn't need to be. Manipulation, 4 out of 10. He doesn't manipulate people through elaborate schemes. His presence does the work for him. Fear, 10 out of 10. This is Michael's territory. The mask, the silence, the slow walk, the uncertainty. Ideology, 3 out of 10. Michael doesn't give us a detailed philosophy, and strangely, that makes him scarier. Damage, 10 out of 10. The destruction follows him everywhere. Hero impact, 10 out of 10. Laurie Strode becomes defined by surviving him. Their conflict becomes generational. Legacy, 10 out of 10. Michael Myers is one of the most influential horror villains ever created. Michael Myers doesn't need to explain himself. He doesn't need a complicated master plan. He doesn't need to tell you why he's coming. He simply keeps coming. And that's Michael's greatest weapon. Inevitability. You can run, you can hide, you can fight, but eventually, you have to turn around. Number 6, Candyman. Say his name, but be careful, because this villain doesn't simply haunt a location. He haunts belief itself. Candyman, a supernatural figure born from tragedy, legend, trauma, and fear. And that gives him something very few horror villains possess: mythology. Power, 8 out of 10. Supernatural abilities put Candyman firmly in the upper tier. Intelligence, 8 out of 10. His greatest weapon isn't simply supernatural strength, it's understanding how legends spread. Manipulation, 9 out of 10. Candyman exists through belief, and belief is one of the most powerful forms of manipulation. Fear, 10 out of 10. The mirror, the name, the anticipation. Ideology, 8 out of 10. Candyman carries themes involving history, racism, trauma, folklore, and collective memory. Damage, 8 out of 10. His supernatural vengeance leaves a trail of destruction. Hero impact, 9 out of 10. Those who encounter Candyman don't simply fight a monster. They confront the history surrounding him. Legacy, 10 out of 10. Candyman transcends the conventional slasher. He's become a horror legend. Candyman doesn't simply haunt people. He haunts belief. Say his name enough times, and the legend becomes real. That's what makes Candyman so fascinating. He's not merely a monster hiding in the darkness. He's a story that refuses to die. And sometimes, the most powerful monster is the one people are willing to believe in. Number 5, Hannibal Lecter. Now we're entering dangerous territory, because Hannibal Lecter doesn't need supernatural abilities. He doesn't need a chainsaw. He doesn't need an army. He doesn't even need to touch you. He can destroy you with a conversation. Power, 3 out of 10. Physically, Hannibal is human. Intelligence, 10 out of 10. This is where he becomes terrifying. Hannibal reads people. He studies them. He identifies weaknesses. And then he exploits them. Manipulation, 10 out of 10. Few villains in horror can manipulate people as effectively as Hannibal. Fear, 10 out of 10. Because Hannibal's greatest weapon is his mind. You can't simply outrun intelligence. Ideology, 7 out of 10. Hannibal has his own twisted standards of refinement, morality, and taste. Damage, 8 out of 10. His physical violence is horrific, but the psychological destruction is arguably worse. Hero impact, 10 out of 10. His relationship with Clarice Starling creates one of horror's most fascinating psychological dynamics. Legacy, 10 out of 10. Hannibal Lecter became the template for the sophisticated psychological monster. Hannibal Lecter doesn't need to overpower you. He needs to understand you. Because once Hannibal understands what makes you afraid, what makes you angry, what makes you insecure, he already has the weapon he needs. And that's what makes him terrifying. His most dangerous weapon isn't the knife. It's his mind. Number 4. Jigsaw. What if the villain didn't chase you? What if he gave you a choice? What if he constructed a trap so psychologically precise that you walked into it yourself? Welcome to the world of Jigsaw. Power, 4 out of 10. John Kramer is human. Intelligence, 10 out of 10. This is his kingdom. His traps require engineering, planning, and psychological analysis. Manipulation, 10 out of 10. Jigsaw doesn't merely manipulate victims, he manipulates their decisions. Fear, 9 out of 10. The clock, the instructions, the uncertainty, the realization that you're trapped. Ideology, 10 out of 10. This is one of Jigsaw's greatest strengths. He believes his victims don't appreciate life. His methods are monstrous, but his ideology is unmistakable. Damage, 9 out of 10. His traps cause devastating physical and psychological consequences. Hero impact, 10 out of 10. Characters who encounter Jigsaw are rarely the same afterward. Legacy, 10 out of 10. The Saw franchise transformed the torture horror landscape, and the image of that puppet is now instantly recognizable. Jigsaw doesn't have to chase you. He doesn't have to overpower you. He doesn't even have to be in the room. He simply creates the rules and forces you to make the choice. That's what makes Jigsaw so disturbing. He turns survival into a psychological experiment, and somehow, he convinces you that you're participating voluntarily. Number 3, Pinhead. The puzzle box, the chains, the hooks, and the voice. Pinhead, or more accurately, the Hell Priest. What makes Pinhead fascinating is that he isn't simply a mindless killer. He operates according to rules. Rules that are ancient, rules that are horrifying, and rules you really shouldn't test. Power, 10 out of 10. Supernatural abilities put Pinhead among horror's heavyweights. Intelligence, 10 out of 10. He possesses immense knowledge of the world he inhabits. Manipulation, 9 out of 10. He understands desire, curiosity, temptation, and consequence. Fear, 10 out of 10. The Cenobites are visually unforgettable, and their methods are, well, nightmarish. Ideology, 9 out of 10. Pleasure, pain, experience, transformation. Pinhead operates according to a disturbing philosophy rather than random violence. Damage, 9 out of 10. The consequences of opening the box can be catastrophic. Hero impact, 9 out of 10. Survival often requires characters to understand rules that are far beyond normal human experience. Legacy, 10 out of 10. Pinhead became one of horror's most recognizable supernatural icons. Pinhead isn't simply a monster, he's a consequence. You open the box, you summon the Cenobites, and suddenly, the rules of your world no longer apply. That's what makes Pinhead so frightening. He doesn't need to hunt you randomly. You invited him, and by the time you realize what you've done, it's already too late. Number 2, Freddy Krueger. Freddy Krueger understood something brilliant. Every other slasher has to find you. Freddy, you come to him every night, and you can't stay awake forever. That's horrifying. Power, 10 out of 10. Inside the dream world, Freddy's abilities are almost limitless. Intelligence, 9 out of 10. Freddy knows exactly how to exploit his victims' fears. Manipulation, 10 out of 10. He plays psychological games before delivering the attack. Fear, 10 out of 10. Dreams are supposed to be where you escape reality. Freddy turns them into a prison. Ideology, 8 out of 10. Freddy's mythology and personal history give him a distinct identity. Damage, 10 out of 10. The danger doesn't disappear when you go to sleep. It follows you there. Hero impact, 10 out of 10. Survivors have to overcome both Freddy and their own fear of sleeping. Legacy, 10 out of 10. The hat, the sweater, the glove, the laugh. Freddy became a cultural icon. Freddy doesn't simply kill you. He takes away the one place where you should feel safest, your dreams. That's what makes Freddy such a uniquely terrifying villain. You can lock your doors. You can board up your windows. You can run to another city. But eventually, you have to sleep. And when you do, Freddy is waiting. Number 1, Pennywise. It doesn't look like a monster. It looks like a clown. And that's exactly the point, because Pennywise understands something ancient. Children are afraid of the unknown, and Pennywise turns the unknown into whatever you fear most. Power, 10 out of 10. The entity behind Pennywise operates on a level far beyond a conventional killer. Intelligence, 9 out of 10. Pennywise understands fear, and more importantly, understands people. Manipulation, 10 out of 10. This is one of the character's greatest weapons. Pennywise doesn't simply attack fear, he studies it, then weaponizes it. Fear, 10 out of 10. This may be the ultimate horror category, because Pennywise doesn't have one form. He can become yours. Ideology, 9 out of 10. Pennywise's nature is deeply tied to predation, fear, and consumption. Damage, 10 out of 10. The threat extends far beyond a single victim. Hero impact, 10 out of 10. The losers aren't simply fighting a monster. They're confronting the fears that have followed them since childhood. Legacy, 10 out of 10. The red balloon, the clown, the sewer, the phrase everyone knows. Pennywise became one of the defining images of modern horror. Pennywise doesn't simply create fear, he weaponizes it. He doesn't have one terrifying form, he becomes your terrifying form, your fears, your trauma, your nightmares, your weaknesses. That's why Pennywise is so dangerous. You can't simply fight the monster, because the monster already knows exactly what scares you. And that gives Pennywise the highest Villainometer score of them all, 78 out of 80. The final leaderboard. Let's look at the final numbers. Number 10, Leatherface, 50. Number 9, Ghostface, 62. Number 8, Norman Bates, 65. Number 7, Michael Myers, 62. Number 6, Candyman, 70. Number 5, Hannibal Lecter, 68. Number 4, Jigsaw, 72. Number 3, Pinhead, 76. Number 2, Freddy Krueger, 77. And number 1, Pennywise, 78. But here's where things get interesting, because the Villainometer doesn't tell us that Pennywise is automatically the villain everyone should fear the most. It tells us something more complicated. I'll tell you in a moment, but first, here are some other summaries that may interest you. Most powerful Pennywise / Freddy / Pinhead. Most intelligent Hannibal Lecter / Jigsaw. Best manipulator Jigsaw / Hannibal / Pennywise. Most terrifying Pennywise / Freddy / Michael. Strongest ideology Jigsaw. Most psychologically damaging Jigsaw / Hannibal / Freddy. Greatest hero impact Freddy / Hannibal / Jigsaw. Greatest legacy Michael Myers / Freddy Krueger / Pennywise / Leatherface. And that gives us the real lesson. There isn't one way to be a great horror villain. Pennywise dominates because he combines almost everything: power, fear, manipulation, damage, psychology, and legacy. But Michael Myers reminds us that a villain doesn't need an explanation to be terrifying. Hannibal Lecter reminds us that intelligence can be more frightening than physical strength. Jigsaw proves that ideology can turn a villain into a twisted philosopher. Freddy proves that your dreams aren't necessarily safe. Pinhead proves that rules can be more frightening than chaos. And Leatherface proves that sometimes the most primal monsters are the ones that don't need a supernatural explanation. So maybe the real question isn't who is the scariest? Maybe it's what kind of villain scares you the most? The unstoppable monster, the genius, the manipulator, the psychopath, the supernatural entity, or the villain who forces you to confront something terrifying about yourself? Because that's what makes horror villains unforgettable. They don't just attack the characters. They attack our sense of safety. They turn familiar places into nightmares. They make us question the darkness outside the bedroom door, the person sitting beside us, or even our own minds. So now it's your turn. Take the 8 categories, score your favorite horror villain, and tell me in the comments, who would you crown as the ultimate Villainometer champion. And if you disagree with my rankings, even better, tell me exactly where I got it wrong. Because around here, we don't just watch villains. We dissect them. I'm the Villainologist, and I'll see you on the dark side of the story. Now, stay tuned for this next awesome video that you will have to see to believe.